Hey, what's going on, everybody? So for those of you who don't know, the college football season really starts tonight. At least the big games seem to. So tonight at 8 o'clock on Fox Sports, we're going to see Ohio State versus Minnesota. Now, we all expect Ohio State to win. This video is not going to predict anything different, but I want to cover the prospects to watch. If you're looking for 2022 NFL draft prospects, these are the guys you should probably keep an eye on tonight. And I should start by mentioning that the one guy everyone's going to be watching who's not draft eligible this coming year is going to be redshirt freshman C.J. Stroud. He's taking over for Justin Fields as the starting quarterback for Ohio State. So everyone's going to have their eyes on him. But again, I just want to bring him up. He's not draft eligible, so we're not going to go too in-depth on him today, but that's someone everyone wants to keep an eye on just for the future moving forward. And that will have a lot to do with how well Ohio State plays this season, depending on how well C.J. Stroud comes in and performs. But the guys you want to keep an eye on if you're Ohio State really start at wide receiver. You have junior Garrett Wilson. You got senior Chris Olave. Olave, for most people, is the top receiver in this coming year's draft. I know some people have him as the top 10 prospect in the coming draft. Wilson, on the other hand, some people have him there too as the number one receiver in the draft. Not everyone. More people are favorites of Olave, but there's some people who have Wilson up there as well. Both these guys have first-round wide receiver potential. I think Olave is almost solidified at this point as a first-round wide receiver. Wilson can do a little bit more to advance his draft stock, but I think most people view him as a first-rounder anyways. So you got two really good wide receivers. And our pass catcher doesn't see a lot of production, but is still viewed as a very draftable player, is Jeremy Ruckert, the tight end they have. Ohio State rarely uses their tight ends in a way that they put up big numbers production-wise. I don't think Ruckert even has had 200 receiving yards in a single season yet. But he's arguably one of the best, if not the best, blocking tight ends in college football. And those guys just sell. Those guys go well in the NFL draft because teams need those players. Guys like Will Disley, guys who are primarily blockers, get drafted, and eventually over time they can develop those receiving skills in the NFL. And I'm not saying that Ruckert can't catch the ball, though. I think he's actually a pretty good receiver or a pretty good pass catcher. The issue has been he just doesn't have those opportunities at Ohio State because of how they run their offense. Will that change this year? Probably not. But I still think you can see some teams get excited with what he can do. And I think a lot of his production will come down to maybe the pro days, maybe the combine, because really we're going to see him block. And we already know he can do that well. We're not going to see a lot of stuff that we haven't seen from him already this year based on what we see from Ohio State's offense. So it's going to come down to maybe his medicals and his measurements basically at the pro day and combine to see how high teams feel he can jump based purely on his physical capabilities, and then go from there in terms of the receiving capabilities, his route running, that kind of stuff. All right, next player to keep an eye on. The offensive line has a few players I want to look at. Junior left tackle, pardon me if I mess this name up, Nicholas Petit-Frere, I believe is how to say his last name. It's either Frere or Ferrer. I'm not entirely certain. I've listened to people say the name. I've heard it both ways already. So even when he said, I watched a commercial he actually filmed recently since the NIL rights came into effect, and I couldn't even really understand how he's pronouncing that last part of his last name. So I apologize if I got that wrong. But he's very good. Let me put it this way. He's so good that they've kicked Thayer Munford into guard, I believe. So how they're going to play it this year. They're going to have Petit at left tackle. And I think they're going to have Thayer Munford playing left guard for the entire season. Now, Munford's a guy people are actually projecting to be a tackle at the NFL level because of his past experiences playing tackle in college football. Because he is a senior. I think he's actually might be a super senior because of that extra year of eligibility that NCAA gave out to players last year because of COVID-19. But Munford actually kicks in the guard. Nicholas Petit-Frere, again, I think I'm saying the last name right, is going to be your left tackle. So he's so good that he actually kicked another guy who was viewed as a top 50 draft prospect into guard. And Petit is a junior. As I said, Thayer Munford is a super senior. So you got these two players out there who are probably going to both go as tackles in the NFL draft. You have to love that if you're Ohio State, having that offensive line built up to help out your younger quarterback in C.J. Stroud, who's a redshirt freshman, and then all the receiving options he has around him. One more player to touch on, Master Teague at running back. He's the junior. He's a productive player. It kind of comes and goes in streaks for him in terms of how he's having good games, if he's having good games, if he's not having good games. Very good at playing through contact. Doesn't necessarily have that second gear, that juice, that burst that teams are going to look for at the NFL level. I still think he's a draftable player, though. And this is still going to be a guy who was going to find a home in the NFL because teams run so much by committee right now at the running back position. And Teague has that skill set to fit into that one niche spot that some teams are going to need in their backfield. So he's definitely going to get drafted. It's just a question of which round, if he goes out into the NFL draft. On defense, definitely fewer selections here defensively for Ohio State, but certainly some players to keep an eye on. Both edges I'm looking at, senior Tyreke Smith and junior Zach Harrison. Of the two, Zach Harrison has the highest potential and the highest ceiling to go in the NFL draft. I think he's going to be maybe a borderline first-round pick projection-wise going into the season. And of course, that's basically banking on a lot of growth from what we've seen from Zach Harrison so far. He only has 5.5 career sacks to this point. He's only played 17 games. Again, that's not all necessarily starting time for him. So we'll see how he performs now, stepping up into a larger role with Ohio State's defense this year. There's a lot of projection that goes into ranking him going into the season. But for now, people are viewing him as maybe a borderline first-round pick. Tyreke Smith, less so. He's not going to be viewed as a first-round kind of guy, but he's still going to be viewed as a draftable player going into the season. I think there's going to be a lot of projections again for his role based on how little production he has up to this point in his career. He only has 4 career sacks. So there's a lot to project for this Ohio State defense. At the same point, one of these guys is going to hit. One of these guys is going to be big time. Someone's going to go probably at least in the second round from these two. So you're going to have that there for Ohio State's defensive front. You also have Haskell Garrett at defensive tackle. He's a super senior as well, I believe. This is a guy who chose not to go out into this past year's draft. Instead, he stays behind. Again, for the second year in a row, the interior defensive line class is not that great looking ahead to 2022. So Haskell Garrett, to me, is a guy who can sneak into the back of the third round maybe, somewhere in that area. We know what he is at this point. We've had plenty of film on him. We have plenty of time to look at what he's accomplished so far. I wouldn't project for a lot more growth in his, I guess you could call it second senior year, but this is a guy who could maybe get into the second round. I wouldn't project for it. I'd say probably going to be a third round pick and kind of max out there, but still great to have that experience on the defensive front and really help out some of your younger guys or less experienced guys in Tyreke Smith and Zach Harrison. And Sevyn Banks is the big man in the secondary, senior cornerback. I have a difficult time evaluating corners, I'll just admit that. One of the things I don't love about some of this position, I agree at some points, like defensive line, tackle, I don't really care if they stick around for their senior seasons because that I think actually helps them and prepares them better for the NFL. If you're a corner and you're sticking around for your senior year, I do have some questions sometimes because a lot of the best corners, a lot of the best wide receivers, they go out their junior year. It just makes more sense for that position, same with running back, than it does for somewhere like offensive line sometimes or defensive line. So I don't know, Sevyn Banks, senior corner. He's been a good player. I just don't know where he's going to end up. I think he could go anywhere from honestly the back of the first round to me to like the top of the third, maybe even the top of the fourth. You know, it's a wide range for me in terms of the cornerback class this year. And there are a bunch of guys like that in this year's group who I'm just not sure where they're going to end up. Banks only has 1 career interception. He's stepping into a larger role this year than what he's played in the past. I think last year was his first year as a full-time starter, I believe. So things are changing quite a bit for him. We're going to get to see a full year experience on him. Now he's had 1 year as a starter, so we'll see how this all plays out. But Banks, the arrow's pointing up for him, certainly. I'm just not entirely sure where he's going to fall in this whole scenario. All right, on to Minnesota. Minnesota has a much shorter list, I swear, for prospects in Ohio State. It starts off with Redshirt senior quarterback Tanner Morgan. Morgan's time to me as an NFL prospect or as a viable NFL prospect for the most part has passed. He's going to be drafted probably. Most of these senior quarterbacks are going to get drafted. The concern is he was not good this past year. 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, just was not near what he was during his sophomore year in 2019. 2019 was the year he had 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and Minnesota was competing fairly well at that point in time that season. So the concern with Tanner Morgan now is that he's taking a step back. He didn't look good last year. And granted, you could probably throw the tape out from last year because of all the issues with COVID-19. But Tanner Morgan's time as an NFL prospect might have passed already, unfortunately. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, I think he's going to be drafted. I just don't know where. And there are a lot of difficult names to say on this Minnesota roster, so I apologize if I messed any of these up. But senior running back Mohamed Ibrahim, I believe is how you say his last name. At least that's the pronunciation I believe I heard on the live broadcast. But he's a decent running back. I think he's got the production certainly to belong in the NFL. I don't think he's going to compete for a first-round spot by any means. He might be more of a day 3 player. He's got 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons under his belt. Hasn't played much of a role in the receiving game yet. He's a little bit small in terms of the height. He's 5'10", but he's got 210 pounds, but he's listed at. So he's got decent bulk for the position. We'll just see if he's able to keep that production up. Because if he can keep that production up, he's probably going to secure himself a spot in the draft. We just don't know where. Huge projection at right tackle is his senior Daniel Falele. You're going to hear this name quite a bit. This guy's like the mountain of tackles in college football right now. I know he slimmed down a bit this offseason. I forget how much weight he lost. He lost a good amount of weight, but he was originally last year listed at like 6'9", 380 was what he was listed at last year. I think he's down to, I forget if it's the 360s or the 350s. He's lost a good amount of weight, but he's still ginormous. And teams love to see that kind of player who's just so physically imposing. Granted, being that tall, there's a lot of concerns about bend, a lot of concerns about leverage, certainly. And that weighing that much can be concerns about maybe your movement, your foot speed, that kind of stuff. But again, people love to see the pure size or something like that. This guy's going to get suitors in the NFL draft. Again, it's just a question of where. Senior edge rusher Boye Mafe has been fairly productive. He has never been a superstar. I don't think he's going to be competing for a day one or early day two selection. Maybe a late day two selection would be the peak I could see for him. Listed at 6'4", 265 going to last year. It's just pretty good size for an edge rusher of his caliber. 7.5 sacks for the past 2 seasons. So there's production there. There's some size there. Some quality there. I just don't know if he's going to crack day 2 or not. Because this is a pretty good edge rushing class that's already been over. So I don't really know where he's going to end up. Hey, Clemson transfer. Senior defensive tackle Niles Pinkney. Sorry about that. Formerly of Clemson. He was a guy who I had my eye on a little bit last year. Wondering who's going to go into the NFL draft out of Clemson. He didn't go. He's a solid player. He's never been a superstar. Never really separated himself from the other players in that Clemson defensive line, which is kind of why he transferred to get more playing time. And you got guys like Brian Brzee and Tyler Davis in Clemson who are clearly outshining him. So I don't know exactly where he will go either. I think he's going to be drafted. I think he could have a big year in Minnesota and certainly produce a lot of buzz. But again, the issue has been he's already been outshined by quite a few players in Clemson who got more playing time than him. So we're going to compare him to the top defensive lineman in this class or top defensive lineman even in the 2023 class. It's going to be hard to get very far. I can certainly see him going in day 3, though. And the last one I want to highlight, Connie Durr, the cornerback for Minnesota. Definitely a different player than they had last year when they had Benjamin St. Juste come out and was like tall, lengthy. Connie Durr is 5'10", about 200 pounds. So he's got about the weight you want. The size, obviously a little bit small. He has 4 interceptions in the past 3 seasons, and he's going to be a super senior this year. So there's probably going to be a lot of concerns with him. Would he be drafted? I can't really tell you. I would assume he would be drafted based on the production so far. 10 passes defensed in 2019, 5 this past year in only 7 games. So he's got the numbers. I just don't know about the physical size and the traits that teams are looking for. I don't know if we'll have that or not. We'll certainly learn quite a bit from this game tonight about who's legit and who's going to have to an upward hill battle basically to make it into the NFL draft and to raise their draft stock moving forward. But that's about maybe 2 dozen names you should look at during tonight's game if you want to get a head start on scouting the 2022 NFL draft and who your team should be targeting moving forward. Definitely a lot of Ohio State players, a couple underrated players from Minnesota that could really play a role. Falele is definitely the one you want to keep an eye on of that group. I would not overlook Boye Mafe. But other than that, that's about all I have for right now. Enjoy the game, guys. Have a good day.